Nebraska's 2024 football season is officially over, and with that, I can finally reveal my first annual Husker Football Award Show. We're going to be going over a multitude of players. We'll be giving them awards such as MVP, biggest surprise, most underrated, and so much more, along with the best moments this season. So buckle up. It's going to be a good one. So really quick, hit that like button, helps me out. And also, if you're a diehard Nebraska fan and you're unsubscribed, it is the perfect time to hit that subscribe button. I'm going to continue to bring you the best content on Nebraska YouTube all off season long. So please hit that subscribe button. It would help me out greatly. But without further ado, let's get into it, going over my official first annual Husker Football 2024 Award Show. We're going to be going over a bunch of individual awards, and I want to get things started talking about the biggest surprise player this season for the Huskers. This is awarded to a guy that a lot of people weren't expecting to necessarily play at the level that they did. This is going to go to a player on the defensive side of the football. Year Wright gets my surprise player of the year. Now, if you guys remember his recruiting process, we brought this guy in the summer coming in from USC. We knew the physical attributes were there. We knew how good he was with the Trojans. It was just a matter of if he could get on the field. But when he did get on the field, it took a little bit of time, but going into that Illinois game, oh my goodness, did he play well. He was one of the best players on this Husker defense throughout the course of the year. And while the secondary wasn't very good for the Huskers, to say the least, he was the one golden light who continued to provide hope for the Huskers, and he's going to be a guy who's going to be shut down next year as a senior. So, Year Wright officially ends the season with 6 passes defended, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, a sack in there. Really like Year Wright this season. He gets my biggest surprise just because I think a lot of people were expecting him to come in and be in the mix. I don't think people necessarily expected him to be as good as he was. He was one of the best corners in all of college football statistically, and he graded out that way according to Pro Football Focus. So really happy with Year Wright. I expected him to be good. I was surprised with how good he was. That's why he gets my biggest surprise award to get things going. I want to go next to my most underrated player from 2024, a guy who just doesn't get talked about enough as being an impact player. This is on the defensive side of the football as well. This is Willis McGahee. So, freshman coming out of Miami, Florida. I think, his presence is a lot of time overshadowed by Vincent Shavers. We know how good Vincent Shavers is. That guy's going to be a stud. But his counterpart, Willis McGahee, has been as good this season. Again, 1 sack, 2 forced fumbles. I thought he had a really good game versus Boston College. Very underrated. Of course, he had that forced fumble versus Colorado that sealed the deal. He just showed time and time again how much of a natural pass rusher he is. Phenomenal genetics. Of course, his dad was a legendary running back for Miami. So I really feel good about Willis McGahee's future. I thought he was underutilized. He should have got on the field more than he did. And he's one of those guys where whenever he got on the field, he made a play. I'm excited for Willis McGahee. This is a guy that I expect to start next year at that jack spot for the Huskers. So he gets my most underrated player award. People don't talk about him enough. They talk about, Shavers, and Shavers is a very good player. He deserves all the credit. But Willis McGahee is just as good, and I think he's going to be a good duo going into next year. So we talked about the most underrated player. I'm going to get into the most overrated player. Now, I feel bad giving this player's no longer with the Huskers, so I don't feel as bad. This is Jamari Butler. Jamari Butler, I expected a lot from him going into this year. I mean, if you guys have been with me since the offseason, you guys knew how much I was hyping up Jamari Butler. I thought he was going to have a breakout NFL season. I thought he was going to have, 7+ sacks. He only had 2 sacks for the Huskers. You know what I mean? It was, really unproductive season. He dealt with a lot of injuries. He wasn't that great natural pass rusher that we thought he was going to be. He really struggled in the running game as well. Again, Jamari Butler is a fine player, and I think he's going to have success at LSU, but I expected him to be kind of that game-breaking player. They talked him up all offseason long. Matt Rhule was saying how much of a, force he was going to be, and he just didn't show up. So Jamari Butler, I felt like he was pretty overrated. I thought he was pretty underwhelming, to say the least. Again, I feel like he's still a great player, athletic freak. He's going to be good at LSU, but just not the player I was expecting. I think a lot of people were expecting. The coaching staff hyped him up. He hyped up himself. He had a good game against Colorado. I thought he played well in the early season, just got banged up and really was never that guy we necessarily expected. So again, I'm not trying to hate on Jamari Butler. It's the way it is. He was overrated, but not saying he's not going to be successful at LSU. He's going to be a good player there. Wish him the best of luck. But that's what we give here. We give good awards, bad awards sometimes, but most overrated player, Jamari Butler. I don't feel as bad given the fact that he went over to LSU, but we wish him the best of luck. I'm rooting for him. I'm going to be tuned in to see how he does. So that's the overrated award. Let's get back to a positive award here, a very positive award. freshman of the year for Nebraska. So there's three ways I can go about this. Okay, you can either give this to Dylan Rhule, you can either give this to Ja'Cory Barney, or you could give this to Vincent Shavers. I'm going to go with the easy pick, the pick that nobody should be questioning. This is Ja'Cory Barney, okay? Don't overthink it. I know Dylan Rhule is a five-star quarterback, everybody's favorite player. Ja'Cory Barney had one of the best seasons we've ever seen from a true freshman Nebraska player, literally ever. 55 receptions. That's the freshman wide receiver record. I think that got overshadowed a lot throughout the course of this year just because of Dylan and some of these other players. But Ja'Cory Barney was arguably our most consistent player on the team. When we needed a big play, it was Ja'Cory Barney who made that. Isaiah Nair played really well those first couple weeks, didn't play well the final half of the year. Jamal Banks didn't really play well the first couple weeks, then played very well the last half of the year. Ja'Cory Barney was consistent the entirety of the year. He had a great game versus Purdue. He was one of the only things working in our offense in the Ohio State game. We should have pulled that upset. He was the only reason we were competitive against UCLA. Again, Ja'Cory Barney just overall, when his number was called, he showed up. And in my opinion, he didn't get enough snaps at the end of that year. I think they mismanaged that receiver room, especially in that Iowa game. Like, people are asking, why didn't he play well versus Iowa? Again, let's see his official stat line versus Iowa. He had 29 yards, 3 receptions. It's because he wasn't on the field as much as he should have been. Like, Ja'Cory Barney, freshman of the year. I mean, Dylan, obviously, good year, but don't overthink it. He had the best performance we've ever seen from a true freshman at Nebraska at that wide receiver spot. Again, receptions leader. I believe he's going to be a great player for Nebraska. Potential All-American going forward. So, feel pretty good about this. I'm not even questioning this again. Dylan Rhule's a good player. Come on. Ja'Cory Barney, let's not overthink this. He carried our offense. He is in the mix for that MVP award that we'll get to later down the line. Next, I want to talk about my assistant coach of the year. So, not the head coach, not necessarily a coordinator, but the assistant coach of the year, meaning a positional coach. Which positional coach was the best? I'm going to go to a guy who's honestly very underrated. A lot of people don't talk about him. Rob Dvorak, our linebackers coach. I think he outdid himself this year. Okay, there was a lot of really good linebackers who started playing very, very well, kind of out of the blue. John Bullock was phenomenal for the Huskers. Vincent Shavers, true freshman. Willis McGahee, Javin Wright played very, very well. I thought Stephon Thompson, even when he got in the game, he got better as the year progressed. So I really feel good about Rob Dvorak as our linebackers coach. There were some questions when we hired him, but man, I really, really feel good about where we stand. He's also turned out to be a pretty darn good recruiter, landing Dawson Merritt, landing Christian Jones, landing Pierce Newberry. I think Rob Dvorak is going to be a pretty good land for the Huskers, but he was our best positional coach. Runner-up is Terrence Knight, and the defensive line was very impressive once again. I thought, he developed a lot of really good talent, whether that was Keona Davis, whether that was Elijah Judy, Riley Van Poppel's constantly progressing. So that was my runner-up there, but Rob Dvorak, linebackers coach, he is going to be my award winner there. Now I'm going to go to our best moment, the best play from this year. Now, there's a couple options. I could go to multiple plays in that Wisconsin game. I could go early in the year, Isaiah Nair's touchdown versus UTEP, that bomb from Dylan Raiola. But let's not overthink this. The best play from this year, undoubtedly, Tommy Hill's pick six versus Colorado. Now, I was actually in that north end zone. So, I was watching that play, and man, when he picked that ball off, the stadium exploded to a level I've never seen before. Absolutely crazy. And that's when you knew the route was on. That's when you knew we were blowing out Colorado from the very beginning. So, Tommy Hill, shout out to him for that pick. Unfortunate that the rest of the season went the way it did. Again, I know some people are going to say he should be getting the overrated award. No, he shouldn't, because he got injured. It wasn't really his fault. But Tommy Hill, man, when he was on the field and when he was healthy, he was a good player. I'm rooting for him in the NFL. All right, guys, I want to get to my reliable player of the year. A guy who just constantly showed up every single game. Honestly, wasn't talked about as much as he should have been. And this is John Bullock. Now, John Bullock, I thought, had a really, really good year. He was third in the team in tackles. I believe he was around that 70 mark. Yep, officially 70. He also had 5 passes defended, 4 sacks on the year. People don't talk about that. 1 pick 6 interception to seal the deal versus Purdue. And this guy had constant, multiple, big-time fourth down stops, whether that was in that Colorado game, Boston College game, Wisconsin game. This guy just constantly was a really, really good tackler for the Huskers, stood up when it mattered the most, and honestly wasn't talked about enough. I thought he had a really good season. He struggled a little bit down the stretch, whether that was in that Ohio State game. I thought he struggled a little bit against UCLA, but for the most part, he was one of the more reliable players on that defense. There was only one player who I think was more reliable, and we're going to get to them later in this video. He's getting another award. But this is my Mr. Reliable of the year, John Bullock. Really solid career with the Huskers, one of our last ever walk-ons. Shout out to you, Mr. John Bullock. All right, let's get to our best win of this season. Now, There's pretty much two options here. We didn't have a bunch of great wins. Colorado or Wisconsin. I'm going to go with the Wisconsin game as our best win. The reason why this is our best win, because Wisconsin's not a better team than Colorado. Let's get that off the board. The reason why this is our best win is because we broke the narrative. There were a lot of things going against us, a lot of mental things. Nobody really believed at that point we were on a 4-game losing streak. People were saying, oh, we're going to lose 6 straight. We're not going to make a bowl game. There was a mental hurdle to get this done. Not only did you get this victory, you dominated from the get-go in front of your fans, man, who needed this. They needed a bowl game, and you got it done versus Wisconsin. So this is undoubtedly, in my opinion, the best win for the Huskers this year. Obviously, Colorado was a great win, unforgettable, but I'm never going to get this Wisconsin game. Being there with my family, seeing the victory, celebrating a bowl game for the first time in 8 years, blowing them out in the way that we did, never going to forget that. So 44-25, that's my win of the year for the Big Red. I also want to get into my breakout player of the year guy. Kind of came out of nowhere. This is Gunnar Gottula on the offensive line. Second-year player, offensive tackle. Gunnar Gottula ended up being our second highest graded offensive lineman this year as a second-year player. Okay, and he got put in a tough situation at left tackle. I think Gunnar Gottula is going to have a phenomenal future with the Huskers. And people aren't really talking about that as much as they should. Gunnar Gottula, breakout player of the year. I liked him going into this offseason. I didn't love him. Now I love him because he played really, really well. And although he struggled at times, that's going to happen with a second-year player. That struggle that he had now is going to make him a better player next year. 100%. So I feel good about Gunnar Gottula. I feel great about him being that breakout player award winner. So that is my last award until let's get into my MVP. So I think it's tough to give one individual MVP. So I'm going to go to an offensive MVP and a defensive MVP. Offensive MVP is going to go back to Mr. Ja'Cory Barney. Now, again, I just don't want to overthink it here. Ja'Cory Barney, the most consistent player on offense. Dylan Rhule had his highs. That Colorado game was a high. That Utah game was a high, but he had his lows. The Indiana game was a low. That Ohio State game was a low. You could argue that Illinois game, missed that game-winning, touchdown to Luke Lindemeyer. That was a low. So Raiola, I think, wasn't really an option here for the MVP. Emmett Johnson didn't play enough for him to be the MVP. Dante Dowdle was good, not great. These wide receivers besides Barney were super inconsistent, whether that was Banks or Nair. The offensive line was inconsistent. You got to go with Ja'Cory Barney here, just the most consistent player on the team. Future All-American, freshman, stud. Give Ja'Cory Barney your love and respect. This guy's an absolute stud. I'm very excited for him going into next year. So Ja'Cory Barney, offensive MVP. I'm looking forward to him starting in this receiver core with Dane Keene, Isaiah Hunter, the other Kentucky wide receiver as well. Defensive MVP, couple options here. You could go with John Bullock. You could go with Ty Robinson. You could go with Nash. I'm not going to overthink this either. Everybody should know the answer. This is Ty Robinson. 7 sacks on the year. He broke a lot of narratives. I'll say this. I was critical about Ty Robinson going into the season. I was critical. I told you guys all offseason, Ty Robinson's a phenomenal player, phenomenal upside. He's a former 4-star guy, but he just kind of never lived up to the expectations, at least coming out of high school. He only had 1 sack last year, 2 sacks before that. He was just never that great pass rusher that we thought he was going to be until this year. He was a dominant force. Now, is he a first-round draft pick? Probably not. But he was a guy who constantly showed up for Nebraska, made the biggest plays on defense for us, got multiple big-time sacks, was great in that Ohio State game, was good in the Iowa game, was good in the Wisconsin game. Ty Robinson, shout out to him, easy defensive MVP here. The guy broke a lot of narratives, is going to be a really high NFL draft pick in a couple months. So really happy about Ty Robinson the year that he had. He finally broke out, and he broke out in a big way. He's our defensive MVP. All right, guys. Pretty fun video going over my awards for Nebraska football in 2024. Let me know down below your award, something I didn't mention. Let me know down below in the comment section. I absolutely want to read what you have to say. Do you disagree with me about a pick? I absolutely want to read your opinion, so let me know in the comment section. Hey, if you made this far in the video, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. Really helps me out on the channel. Again, we're going to continue to bring the best content on Nebraska YouTube all off season long. All right, guys, hit the like button and subscribe. As always, folks, go Big Red. Go Rhule. See you in the next one.